I think the real credit to the Chinese community in Australia has been engaging with education. I don't think there's any community in Australia that has made a bigger effort in making sure that the next generation coming through has every possible opportunity for education and for learning. And because of that ethic, which is so strong in the Chinese community, we've ended up seeing young people of Chinese background get academic results that are way beyond and way above the average of the rest of the community. It's a great credit to the Chinese community, but it's also really good for Australia. And if you're performing well with education, that is always the best way of making sure you've got a great chance in Australia as well. One of the things that I've been passionate about is about making sure we have nursing homes which are run by the Chinese community. As people get older, no matter how well they've made their life in Australia, as people get older, very frequently they revert to the memories of childhood, to the language of childhood. And I can't imagine many things worse as you get older than looking around and thinking everything is unfamiliar. These Chinese-speaking nursing homes which have been established, where the staff speak Mandarin and Cantonese, I think have been a real step forward for dignity for Chinese Australians. Because what it's meant is they can be surrounded by people where the language is familiar, the music is familiar, the food is familiar, the culture is familiar. And I really think that's one of the wonderful things that's happened for the Chinese community in Australia, in particular for elderly people. I always love going past places like Hurstville, where there's rooms there of elderly people in massive numbers playing mahjong all afternoon. And I think increasingly those sorts of social opportunities are being made available and provided here in Australia. I think it's fair to say 20 years ago or so it wasn't being done as well as it is now. But I think one of the things that's important, particularly with a Labor government, is the government that we have at the moment is passionately supportive of making sure that Australia is part of the next century, which is an Asian century. And the Chinese community here in Australia guarantees that we can be one of the leading nations to harness those opportunities. As a Labor government, we understand that. It's part of what we believe. It's part of who we are. The key to population policy is making sure that we get the people who we need and we get them in the parts of Australia where we need them most. One of the challenges we had for a long time in Australia was we had people settling in areas where there weren't many jobs, and then in areas where there was lots of employment opportunities, we were having trouble getting people to settle there. Chinese community, because of the commitment to education, has always been able to chase the best paying jobs, the best possible opportunities, and that's exactly what we want to happen. It's been part of the focus in making sure that we have demand-driven business migration as well, so that when an employer needs extra workers, they're able to get them, and people arrive and are able to fit in straight away, because the best way to find a good home in Australia is to have a job from the day you arrive. And I think the Chinese community has been a great example of that. Look, the future will be guided by what the needs of the nation are, and in a nation as large as Australia, with a very low population, it's just important that we get people arriving to the right locations and finding a job as quickly as they can. And that's where good planning is the key to good population policy. You don't want to have situations where infrastructure, where class sizes, where the roads, where the trains, you don't want to have a situation where none of that is keeping pace with population as it grows. If you get the planning right, then the population issues work in a very streamlined way. The challenge we've had recently has been there's been a large number of job opportunities in remote areas because of the mining boom. Now, we've got around some of that through fly in, fly out, where people have still been able to live in the cities and have their principal residence there. but have a system where they work for 2 weeks on site, come back for a week in between. And that sort of system has been a very effective way of dealing with the challenges where the jobs might be more remote, but people tend to want to live in the cities. Most important thing for me as representing an area with many people of Chinese background is I want to use this next year to make sure that Australia is taking the opportunities that are there for the Asian century. I want to make sure that we're taking the opportunities in employment, in education, that are there for a century that will be very different to what the last century was. The last century was very much dominated by Europe and the United States. This century is going to be dominated by Asia. And the strongest asset that a nation like Australia has is to have a strong Chinese community at the exact same time that China is emerging as a more and more significant nation throughout the world. Well, it's the year of the snake, a year where people need to see the opportunities of being cunning, of being smart. And with the Asian century, it's a time where Australia needs to be able to harness those sorts of opportunities to make sure that as the whole world and the focus shifts to Asia, Australia as a nation with a really strong Chinese population is at the heart of taking those opportunities. So for each and every one of you for the Year of the Snake, Happy New Year. Can't wait to be sharing it with you.